Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to teach you the difference between what you can handle yourself as a CSM and what you can push up to your director or the owner of the agency. This matters because if a CSM escalates everything, then leadership will become the bottleneck. And if a CSM never escalates problems that are strategic problems that need a strategic solution, will just sit there repeating and getting worse over time. So I'm going to give you a very clear framework, what the CSM owns, what the director owns, and when the owner or partner needs to step in. So, as a CSM, you own every individual account level problem. For example, if one client stops logging in, that's your problem to solve. If a client has workflows sitting in draft, that's your problem to solve. If a client has a failed payment that the automation didn't resolve, again, that's something that the CSM should handle. Anything where the problem is specific to one account and the fix is outreach or a training call or helping them activate a feature, the CSM should handle that. The CSM should also own the follow up. So after reaching out the first time, give it a couple of days or a week, go back to the account health hub and check if the signal has actually improved. If it did, congratulations, you handled it well and you can move on to the next one. If it didn't, you're definitely going to need to follow up. The key thing here is that the majority of at risk accounts are CSM level problems. You have the data in GoCSM. You can trigger workflows, you can request feedback, or just pick up the phone, send an email, send an SMS, or even a recorded voicemail. That's your lane, and that's the bulk of the work. Now, here's when you need to escalate to a director. A CSM should be escalating when the problem stops being about one account and starts about being a pattern. So when the CSM starts noticing a pattern, the same issue, the same problem repeating across multiple accounts over the same time period, that's the right time to actually escalate to a director level position. So, for example, let's say you're going through the at-risk accounts on a Monday morning, and you notice that three or four of them have the same issue. For example, feature adoption across all of them has dropped, contacts has dropped, time spent in the conversations tab has dropped, emails or SMS or phone calls, outbound phone calls have dropped. Um, that's a pattern when you see that across multiple accounts. So a pattern just means that the problem is probably not something that can only be fixed in one-on-one outreach. It's probably a systemic issue and requires a strategic solution. Maybe your onboarding process is missing a step. Maybe a specific plan tier doesn't include enough training. Maybe an article or training videos are missing from your knowledge base. So, whatever it is, the CSM can identify and see the pattern, but the fix lives above the CSM level. That's what the customer success director is for. So when you bring it up to your director, bring up specifics. Don't just say a bunch of accounts are at risk. Say that these X amount of accounts all onboarded in the last 60 days and they all have the same issue, and then describe the issue. And you can say, I think there's a gap in our onboarding, or there's a gap in our training, or whatever it is. This gives the director the data to work with, as well as your thoughts as a CSM who sees and identifies this issue on what direction they can start thinking about in terms of a solution. And the other time that you get to escalate to a director level position is when your intervention doesn't work. So this means you've reached out, you did a training call, you helped them activate whatever they needed to activate. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, the account is still sitting in the at risk category. And so maybe the account needs a different CSM. Maybe there's a deeper issue in your initial diagnosis. Maybe your approach needs to be changed. So the director can look at it with fresh eyes and decide on the next move. They can watch the recordings. They can see all the data inside of GoCSM, and come up with a strategic plan of action. And finally, when should the owner or the partners get involved? They should get involved when the problem is about money, pricing, or core pillars of your business model. So, for example, if MRR at risk in the health overview section right here is actually increasing consistently week over week, then the partners should step in, because that's not just the GoCSM problem at this point. And it may not even be something that the director can solve, or maybe the director has tried to solve it. Ultimately, this is a systemic issue on a very high level. It could be that uh, plan tier is priced too low for the service level that it requires. Or maybe there's a segment of clients who keep churning consistently, and your agency needs to reevaluate and decide whether to keep going after that segment, market segment, or not, or to switch gears. These are high level business decisions. Another scenario is your highest MRR accounts are not responding to the outreach of the customer success managers. So if your biggest client all of a sudden is at risk and they're ignoring the outreach attempts from the CSMs, then that account probably needs a call from the partner or the owner or the founder, because a direct message from the person who owns or runs the agency will carry a completely different weight, completely different tone. And for your top accounts by revenue, ultimately, this is the personal touch can be that can make the difference between saving the account and getting the account to actually churn. So to recap, the framework is pretty simple. CSMs should own individual accounts. One client has a problem, the CSM fixes it, and then follows up. Directors should be looking at patterns, and CSM should be bringing up patterns in product adoption, login inactivity, MRR issues, reduced wallet spend, time spent on the platform, things like that, to the director. And when the same issue keeps repeating across accounts, or when the CSM's outreach doesn't move the needle, then the director can step in. And that owners and partners and founders essentially own the strategy for the agency and can do high value saves when some of the top priority accounts are at risk. So when MRR at risk keeps climbing, when there's high priority accounts that need personal intervention, when the business model itself needs to be adjusted, that's when the owner or partner should step in. And finally, if you're a solo operator who's wearing all three of these hats, the framework still applies. You're just thinking about it from each hat's perspective: CSM, customer success director, and owner. So, is this, when you look at an account or when you look at an issue, ask yourself, is this a one account fix? Is this a process that needs to be fixed? Or is this a business model pillar that needs to be changed? That question alone will tell you where to spend your time. Hope you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.